So first we'll start off with cameras. How they can be used, the different types of cameras you have within Maya that we can set up to render with Arnold. What I've done is I've sort of loaded this scene in. You guys should be well aware of this scene. Let me just hide that. So what I'm going to do is just hide this out of the way. Pressing H on my keyboard just to get rid of them. We'll start looking at cameras. So you first want to do is go into create, put the top here on your top left, and then you got your cameras. So you'll see you have your basic camera, your camera name, camera aiming up. These all have different parameters that can be used. So we'll start with camera. Just F on my keyboard just to focus that in. So you'll see it's just a normal camera. We can scale it, move it. You have that ability to move freely. You should press Control and A for your attribute editor. You've got your different attributes that you can change to your camera. So change your depth of field, change your settings in there, how it reacts with Arnold, exposures and such. I won't recommend changing them just yet. Get used to the different types of cameras and then move into sort of settings. So this is just your standard camera. If we go here on your left hand side, you'll be used to using the 4 views. So you press spacebar, you see your 4 views like this. But if you go into your just on the left, you'll have a section where you can see 2, so you get 2 cameras rather than just 4. This should be good. If you click on View up here, so in your right window will have your perspective, and your left window will change that to your camera. So if you click View and cycle through cameras, what that'll do is cycle through to this camera that we just created, which is good for you to be able to see what what you're rendering, how it's going to look. As you see, I can move it along in my perspective view, change where I want my camera, and it'll change in that view because we're getting a sort of look through that camera. It's actually a standard one. There's not really much you can do with it. Just sort of free move it about. Not really much there. But if we click on Create again, what you'll have is a camera name. So again, that's Create Cameras, Camera Name. What you'll see this time is we have a camera. We also have a namer. If you have your outliner open, you'll see that it's created a group. So your aim is actually parented to your camera, so it's connected. What this does, it allows for you to have a focal point. So say if I bring just a cube in, imagine that cube is sort of, I don't know, something you've got in your haunted house. So some of you got candles, some of you got some nice sort of ornaments you've been creating. If you want that to be a focal point, we can set that up. So imagine that's the focal point, the nice fancy sort of decor that you've got that you want to show off and you want your camera to sort of focus on. If we click on View and cycle through your camera, we can see that it is attached. You're sort of looking at it because we set up this aimer. What I can then do is click on the camera and we can move it about and it'll stay on that object. So because we've got that aim set up and aimed at that object, we can move this camera about freely. You can see wherever I want, and it's going to stay looking at that as a focal point. So that's the camera name. We also have, if you click Create Cameras, you have a camera aiming up. What you see, very similar to the camera name, it's got an aim. But if we go into the outliner, we can see it's also it's parented to an up axis, so we can move that around. Move that there, and then what we can do is the camera will follow that, so it'll stick to them. So blue lines you got there, so it'll stay to that. As you see, as I'm moving it, let me just put that onto cycle through. So if you click View, cycle through cameras, you'll see better now. So we can move that, and it'll stay on them axis. You'll see sometimes you'll have issues. So like here, it's at an angle where it's a perfectly straight line rather than having another point in it, and it'll flip the camera. This is what you want to make sure you're careful of. So what I can do is set that in to my cube again. So we're focusing on that cube. We can do a pull where we pull out from that and it goes upwards as well. So rather than pulling it out like we would do if we just had the aim, we have the aiming up so it can come up at an angle as well. So let me move that aim fully up. If I move that up slightly, what you'll see is, if you look in my window here, from the camera, we can move it up and it follows that. So if we just push back, we can see we can still use that aim there. So if we're just using that axis, we can still have as aim. But we can also move it up to a nice angle as well. You can follow that. This will be useful for when you're setting keyframes. So what I'll show you now is how to set keyframes. So you'll see I'm just in my general workspace. This nice little timeline here. Go from 0 to 120. So what I can do is set a keyframe at 1. So that's S on your keyboard, set a keyframe. Move my timeline along, as you are aware, and I have to do, and we can move that to like 120. And I can move my camera, trying to avoid it flipping. So you see there it flipped. We'll try and avoid that. And I can press S again. Saves my keyframe. And now, if you're watching this window, you're watching this window here, you'll see it's moving at quite some speed. So we need that to slow down. Just change that. Let's extend this timeline. So extend this timeline by 300. Yeah, save that. So to do that, it's just this little sort of running icon with a cog. And let me just move that across here. Should move slower. So if let me just do it here. So see, following that, and we set the nice keyframes. So that's cameras. That's sort of the basics of cameras. One last thing you should be aware of. So when you're rendering, Arnold might be preset to your perspective camera. So to change that, what you want to do is here, where you've got your clipper board. So you know your nice little clipper board and your cog. Click on that. Load up your settings. We'll be going more in depth in that a bit later on. Scroll down, and you'll see here where it says Renderable Cameras. You see how I said it is, but it's set to your perspective camera. What you want to do is change that to your camera. So mine's just camera 1. You can change that in your outline. You can change name, and it'll change here. In fact, I'll show you. I'll demonstrate that. So if I change it from camera 1 to test camera, yours might be turntable camera, beauty render camera, whatnot. It'll be here, so you'll know that. Just change that over, and that'll allow you to render from this camera rather than your perspective. So yeah, that is just cameras there. We'll be going more in detail a bit later on.